George Lucas is responsible for creating a magnificent, lovely, enjoyable fantasy sci-fi soap opera. One of the most timeless and beautiful sets of films in the Star Wars original trilogy that we've ever had, and that we'll probably ever have. And for whatever reason, one of his great inspirations for this film, The Hidden Fortress, for whatever reason, this film is often seen as a quality, but a lesser Akira Kurosawa film. It doesn't have the same weight thematically as something like The Seven Samurai, which was remade into The Magnificent Seven. It doesn't go into the depths of the human soul, allegedly, like Akira does, or one of his more serious pictures. And then because of this, this skepticism of the film, or treating it as a little bit of a lesser Kurosawa film that I sometimes read, I think now maybe plenty of folks that might be inclined to watch films that critics suggest aren't seeing it as much. And of course, fans who don't, go outside of the realm of English fans aren't seeing it as much. I was one of those for a long time. And I put off seeing the film thinking it would be a lesser Kurosawa. And that was a true, genuine mistake, because The Hidden Fortress is among Kurosawa's very best work. I am absolutely in love with it, and I can see where George Lucas drew inspiration from this and from all Kurosawa, but from this especially. George Lucas has said in interviews and when I was watching that Kurosawa came from a generation of filmmakers who were influenced so heavily and so meaningfully by silent pictures, silent films. And that's sort of where they learned, how to cook, so to speak. And the power and quality of those images, those directors went a long way in telling the story. And that's something that every filmmaker, every film watcher needs to understand, is that film is first and foremost a visual medium. This film that I'm discussing, The Hidden Fortress, there have been comparisons to the great John Ford. You see this film, The Searchers, behind me, and how it uses space and long shots and distances and horses riding in the background. But the heart of the story is about these two guys, Madasichi and Tahi, who were eventually sort of reimagined as C-3PO and R2-D2, but they're sort of greedy in the aftermath of some kind of war, some kind of conflict we'll learn more about as the story progresses. And they find and stumble upon gold that's sort of hidden in the elements, and they want to do something with that gold, like strike it rich. But someone interrupts their plans. This certain someone, General Rakurata, played wonderfully by Toshiro Mifune, who in this film plays a Jedi Knight kind of role. Very interesting role. And we get other great characters in this. There's a princess, and you haven't seen this without spoiling it, there's a princess who will remind you of Princess Leia, who has to go through Princess Leia-like obstacles in the film. It's a real joy to think about Star Wars while watching this film. But what is so great about the film from a narrative perspective is that these insignificant couple of guys who are funny and clumsy and silly are given such a big part of the stage. Similar, I was just thinking and talking this out, often in Shakespeare, it's not the kings and the queens who give us the best lines. Sometimes it's the court jester, the joker, and that's sort of what's going on here. You'll notice other things. You'll notice the wipe transition with the screen flashing by, like in Star Wars. There's a fight scene in here with Toshiro Mifune and someone else who ends up being another character. I won't talk too much about that, but there's a fight scene in here that feels a little bit like a lightsaber fight. It's choreographed beautifully and well executed, and stuff gets broken, and it's awesome to watch. And it had me on the edge of my seat. And like most of the film, you don't have to do that much reading of subtitles. You can sometimes just sort of keep up with the action. In this film, part of the strength is that it's not reaching too heavily, borrowing too heavily with these like grand, substantial ideas. So in Star Wars, which I have here, good versus evil, this is almost like C.S. Lewis come to life as a sci-fi. It's dealing with heavier subject matter while also being silly with Wookiees and Ewoks, right? I know Ewoks weren't in the first one, but I think Kurosawa's film is dealing more simply with greed and how humans are greedy and always want more. And those thematic elements are purposefully less heavy. And as a result, the film is purely more entertaining. And you can focus on the action, the cinematography, the humor. And it's that kind of picture. And as a result, this becomes a really good, almost swashbuckler at times. It's not quite a swashbuckler, but it's entertaining, and it's meant to be a great film that is riveting and enjoyable in that way. And it does not need some of the weight that something like Seven Samurai has. I mean, we don't have villagers. We're not spending 30 minutes with villagers who are dying of starvation in this film. We're not dealing with someone's existential crisis like in Akira as they are facing a disease that will end their life. It's just different. And I think there's a tendency that critics can have, or that film watchers, and I do it, where if something is not made at that level of thematic importance, we tend to downplay it, or we tend to think it's not as good as something that is. And so I wanted to make this video and talk about this, both for people who are, fans of Star Wars who could benefit from seeing this and could have a good time with it, and for folks who have either been putting off the film or don't think it's smart enough or cool enough or substantial enough or artsy enough, because it's certainly a beautiful, gorgeous piece of work, and you should see it, and it's among my favorite Kurosawa films. I'll leave you with this. I was reading on Letterboxd, Letterboxd. Someone said that they had it on, and their little kids, as they were watching it, they had to have their dad read, or their mom, I don't know if it's mom or dad, whoever it was reading the lines, because the language barrier, and the kids just sat and watched the whole thing and fell in love with it, and were able to be encapsulated in this world that Kurosawa created that is a great fantasy. And I was thinking maybe that's what we need to do with the film. Approach it like a kid at heart and enjoy it for the magnificent treasure that it is. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate it. Tell me your thoughts on the film or any Kurosawa film in the comments. Please click that like button, subscribe to Cody in the Cinema.